Hi, welcome. In this video, I want to respond by way again of a trainer, again, very much dialed into the relationship with dogs the right way at the social level. And again, I profiled these trainers. I believe it's like a husband-wife team as part of my series. And they're from, again, a different country. And again, this is on auto dub. And they've been in my comment section as well. And in fact, one of the comments that this trainer pictured here left was that he actually was a balance dog trainer, and he's made the switch from balance to a interaction based approach. So again, I think it's fantastic. You know, talk about this whole thing with the journey of a trainer, where they end up, and again, understand that I talk about there's more to understanding, what this connection represents between dogs and owners, and getting dialed into what defines the process. Again, talk about the core ingredients. And here in this video, which is a great video, he put out uh, related to the e-collar. And it's an e-collar. Watch this before you use one. So I'm gonna play some of this video again. I think it's fantastic. There's trainers out there. Again, for me, this is a great thing. Very positive. Okay. So, if I see trainers out there that are doing it right, of course I'm going to profile um, their content, because again, sometimes this is helpful because as these trainers talk through, certain things may click better in terms of how they're talking through certain things. So I'd encourage you to check out their channel, their videos, if you're seeking more information. But again, these trainers are actually doing it right. So let's play some of this in relation to the e-collar.
Hello, everyone. Today we'll be discussing a very pressing topic. It's the topic of e-collars, or more precisely, the preparatory phase. There's a preparatory phase that many people aren't aware of, and this phase must be completed before using any collar MC. So what does this preparatory phase mean, and what is an e-collar anyway, and what is it for? We don't need it for punishment.
So here you see some, people go crazy, right? Trainers going crazy watching my videos related to the issue about control. I even talk about a baseline, okay? But dog understanding intent. Okay, so here you see he has this dog under level of intentional control. But again, one of the narratives talk about here is, preparing the way. Okay, when it comes to e-collar, preparatory phase, and this is all about understandable clarity, relationship, by way of how a dog perceives you in the relationship.
It's primarily a means of long-distance communication. That is, we won't be using it as some kind of brute force, as a way to overcome disagreement. And what I want to point out right away is that an e-collar is simply, let's say, a way to hone a skill that's already been clearly developed, not a way to overcome disagreement. A dog runs after a cat. Other dogs. Let's put an e-collar on. We tried it on a choke dog, it doesn't work. We tried it on something else, it doesn't work. Let's just put on an e-collar. That's a dead end.
And just
Now pay attention to this. This is very, very interesting. So here's the other trainer out here filming, okay? And watch what happens here when this dog rushes up with an e-collar.
recently, we accidentally witnessed an improper use of an e-collar.
This dog is yelping, has an e-collar on, okay? And this dog, obviously,
Yes,
this
the
is
dog screamed because
screamed,
the
screamed and pushed through, okay? Very interesting. I talk about this. So understand that when in terms of your role, in terms of how you're seen in the relationship, understand the role of an e-collar by way of influence, okay? It's an extension of the relationship. Understand if you're not seen the right way in the relationship to begin with, and you just strap an e-collar on and think that you're going to the dog, it's going to provide clarity to the dog, and the dog is going to come into agreement with influence that way. you're kidding yourself. Okay, a lot of times this dog had a reaction to it, but continued to move forward. That's where you see dogs pushing through. They'll take the pain to gain fulfillment on the other side, be it another dog, other person, to express it. Okay, you see an example of it right here on video.
I want to press the button on the e-collar, but the dog happily ignored it and learned to overcome this discomfort.
Yeah,
Huge amount of debate ensues.
see that? 100%. She identified it properly, what was going on.
Should we use it? Is it too cruel or not cruel? The dog is very stressed. I'll try to clarify. Stress from the unknown and from not having a clear understanding of how to react. Well, actually, it's bad form to immediately introduce this tool at a high power. That is, this tool is introduced at the very minimum level. That is, it is not a means of intimidation or.
That's right. So you understand that. So when the relationship is established, so I talk about the interactions themselves. Okay, the language of those in terms of how they intercept, express state, as the focus shifts onto the right way, perceptions align in the relationship. You'll see how it all comes together. So the interactions are the primary means to change the how you're perceived in the relationship. Okay, just like a parent-child dynamic. Okay, a tool is an extension of that in terms of clarity, making sense, an extension of you that way. But again, if it's not established the way I talk about influence and control being reconciled socially that way, then there's going to be a problem. Okay, but if it is reconciled properly, okay, then the issue about even being able to get away with, okay, even at the vibration level or at a very low stem level, okay, it's gonna align properly. Okay, but when you got to dial it up, okay, usually that's a sign. And you watch the videos I've done on my, part of my flipping the script series. Go watch the Larry Crone seminar video. It's a perfect illustration of what I'm talking about. He allows his dog controls manifest, and his dog's lunging, 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 and then he's over talking to the participants in this seminar, and the remote collar tells the focal point. This dog is coming out and just expressing control like crazy. And then at a certain point, then he starts hitting that button. Well, you talk about finding the working level. Where do you think the working level is going to be? He's going to juice that thing up. I mean, he does. That dog's blowing through it, right? I mean, because it's got to correspond with through the relationship, dog state of mind. So, I talk about, the proactive. One of the things is being proactive in terms of engaging in express state. The stinking thinking I talk about. But again, it all starts at the beginning, okay, by way of even the proper assessment, the test. You look at the Murdoch situation, okay? I go through all of it. So when you get this whole thing about remote collar, it's an extension of the relationship.
Or anything like that. So preparatory work is leash work,
Leash.
proper leash work.
Proper leash
And
work.
what is proper leash work? How to make sure that it exists. A very simple test. I apply.
See? Make sure it exists. This guy's kind of a funny guy too, I think. So he's been in my comment section. You can tell he's applied critical thinking here. Going from balanced trainer to where he's at now, I can tell that he's asked the questions that a lot of these trainers haven't asked, and he's there. Okay, he's dialed in.
Apply the slightest tension.
Right. So you're right there. The slightest tension. So intent. So you apply the slightest intention, the dog understands your intent directionally, where you want the dog. That's the language. If you use the commands, going down a different path based on, if you do it when you're in the middle of a relationship problem. Okay, once the relationship is established, then the commands are associated with influence and control. They align properly. Okay, understand it's all about going through a sequence.
Without any words.
There you go.
and the dog responds appropriately. That is, it enters the basic position.
See, I was amazed when I looked at the videos from this channel. You know, it's like so anyone out there, whether it's Murdaugh and all these other trainers that want to go on all day long complain, there it is. You know, this is the proof that anyone can figure this out and apply it, put it to the test. These trainers they got the dogs going. Go look at their channel. They're doing it. So, you know, this is all a shell game with these trainers. So, you know, you can see it. This
That
and that.
is, no matter where I lead it, this response is adequate, more or less, already.
See, so again, when you look at that, say, again, same dog understand intent, and then you have to work at that level of agreeableness and or disagreeableness. Okay, there's going to be that transition. You'll see certain points of that through when the relationship is starting to transition. The roles are transitioning. Okay, the agreeableness will increase. Okay, as you know continue as the integrity of the interactions they hold together for a certain period. That's what's going to give you the ability to get the right information to know when you can start to go off leash and more slack leash if you want or whatever. All right, but it's like it's got to hold together for a certain period that way.
Present. That is, this dog will soon be ready. Go for a walk. Also, working at a distance, again, that is, if we're talking about a stone. What's the mistake? Everyone constantly works with treats, and the dog does it, but it's always optional. You know, there's no understanding that he should come, so that he has the concept that he should come. Correct leash work. That is, now I've kind of told him with this signal that you should come here. And when he understands this, firstly and most importantly, that he agrees, that is, I hold the leash with 2 fingers, and he agrees to go here in the direction I'm leading him. So when this level of contact is achieved, and not just the dog staring at me for food, then we can say we have real contact, a real connection, a real understanding of.
Same thing here. It's applying, like I said, control, right? Intentional control, influence, using his hand on the lead. This is fine, and just how he's doing it, right? Just like dog understands intent, directionally. The dog comes into agreement with. See, those core ingredients they need to come together because it has to take the form of a demand, express demand, a reasonable demand for a period of time. Okay, now the information is once the dog's more and more agreeable to it, right? So the dog starts to come into agreement, right? Then everything lines up. All right, but just think about the parenting example, parent-child type of dynamic. It's a demand, okay? A reasonable demand, but parental influence. So always think about, influence as a parent. When I talk about punishment, discipline, all those things, think about parental influence established by way of the relationship. And one of the big things is being proactive, right? So when you get this issue about balanced dog trainers, they're in a reactive posture. They're correcting the dog, but they're too late. They're not dialed in that way, and that causes a problem. So you have to get dialed into the whole thing with the dog's thinking levels, okay? By way of being proactive, dialed in. Those are things that you have to kind of get, gain insight on, but you have to, you got to understand, like talk about proper leash method. The leash is a tool, okay? But it's a way to express, communicate, right? Those core ingredients being reconciled in and through that tool, through how they connect.
How to respond to my body language and the leash, because many haters will immediately start throwing out that the dog only responds to the leash. But I want to point out that he didn't pull on the leash, but the dog followed me. That is, the dog is responding to body language. That's what mechanics are.
So body language wants the focus. See, so influence and control, core ingredients reconciled, generates the right focus. That's what I call fading in. So it sets up this whole body language scenario, right? The dog is like, and then it starts to cue up that way. Okay, you get into hand signals, get into whatever you want.
Mechanics aren't just about the leash. Mechanics are a reaction to body language. Just now, I bent down and he thought that was the command to lie down, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is, the dog wants to understand me.
That's
He's
right. Cue,
perfectly tuned in to
cue it up.
me. So when this contact exists,
So you just so there you can get into not didn't put influence with pushing on this dog even there. Once you get to a certain point, say you can get in there. If you watch my videos of my board trains, I show how that happens. Everything moves ahead. Then you're not touching the dog at a certain point, but the touch needs to be there. The influence and control need to be there to a certain point in the process. Just don't take it away right away. At a certain point, then you're not touching that way, but it's a process.
then using this connection and this well-established communication, we
There it
explain to
is.
him, introduce a new signal and a new signal unknown to the dog occurs, and then the same old signal occurs, which is completely clear. And then there won't be any stress, any misunderstanding, any conflict. Again, that is if a dog on a leash is arguing and chews on the leash, when you pull on it, you can't use an e-collar. And it's not a matter of putting on an e-collar and then resolving some disagreement with it. Yeah. Again, this is just practice over a long distance. And speaking of distance, this distance definitely needs to be practiced on a 10-meter leash. Yes, with a retractable leash. I just don't have one with me right now, but keep that in mind.
That's right. So same thing, setting that in motion, create that association, influence and control. Dog understands intent, starts to, again, set things in motion that way. So see how he's doing it through, a long line, starting to bring that tool online. So all to say, again, this is a really great video. It Again, everything I talk about, you're hearing it here. But I encourage you, really, people that are thinking about devices, think about, what's the proper foundation for those devices to align with. Okay, understand it's about clarity to the dog. It's about the dog making sense of. So check out their channel. Got lots of great information. I mean, he's an example of going from a balanced dog trainer into a interaction based method. Goes again based again on the connection, being dialed in the right way. Again, everything I talk about. But again, great video. Thanks for watching.